It's said that a former colonial master controls a former colony by making it use its language for all matters. When French is used in every government department, it undoubtedly brings French influence into society. Since 1960, French has been the official language of Mali, becoming a tool to control Mali's administration and military. Since the majority of Mali spoke French, used it as an official language, and all the available information was available in French, it meant France was controlling whatever they studied. Subtly, France could change how people in Mali thought about their history, carefully ingesting propaganda. Even the military could be made loyal this way, and that's why we saw so many coups in Mali. But in June of this year, something historical happened. A new constitution was presented where France was suspended as the official language, changing literally everything. With a 96.91% vote in the June referendum, Mali dropped French. However, why did Mali decide to do this at this particular time? Let's get started. The very first interaction between France and Mali dates back to 1855, when the French established a fort in what is now Médine. By 1892, Mali was declared a French colony, known as French Sudan, losing any semblance of economic, political, or social autonomy. This colonization was part of the larger scramble for Africa, where European powers sought to expand their influence and control over the continent. France's colonization of Mali in the late 19th century was driven by economic interests and the desire to exploit the region's abundant resources, including gold, diamonds, copper, and Mali's strategic location along the Niger River. France also aimed to spread its political and cultural influence. One important figure in this colonial history was the French explorer Auguste René Caillet, who was the first European to return alive from the town of Timbuktu. His expedition brought back knowledge of Mali's great wealth, particularly its gold reserves. French colonial authorities established agricultural plantations and mining operations and enforced labor to exploit these resources. They justified their presence with claims of a civilizing mission while exerting political and military control. Mali became a key location for France's colonial ambitions. This colonization was to continue for over 68 years, until 1960, when Mali was given independence. However, during a period of over 6 decades, France changed the way Mali was before the colonization. Perhaps, besides the resource exploitation and hundreds of other abuses France did to Mali, the biggest and everlasting was changing its culture and history. You see, all colonial powers have similarities in educating the young of the colonized country in a way so that they become loyal to the colonizers. Whatever books were taught, they came from France and were in French. This makes it necessary for the people of Mali to learn the French language first. If they wanted to get good jobs, they had to learn French and the twisted facts France wanted everyone to know. For Malians to succeed in civil services, they must view and define history the way the French did. That's when a seed was sown, which was destined to grow forever, brainwashing the people of Mali. How could they be disloyal to the French ideals when they were speaking French? France knew that someday Mali would get independence, which it did in 1960. Even after the independence, the language will keep the people mentally colonized and subjugated, making them loyal unconsciously. Fortunately, leaders in Mali understood this now. Hence, a new constitution was drafted, which dropped French as the official language. It allowed French to be used as a working language for a period until other languages were adopted. In place of French, the nation's 13 national languages will now receive formal recognition as official languages. Additionally, 70 local languages, including Bambara, Bobo, Dogon, and Minyanka, some of which were granted national language status in 1982, will be retained. One might wonder what factors led to these changes. Could they be solely based on developmental grounds? Or could there have been disputes simmering between Mali and its former colonial ruler, France, who have shared a strong historical bond over the years? Well, Mali's decision to shift away from French as an official language comes amid growing anti-French sentiments in West Africa and on Malian soil. Relations between Paris and Bamako have deteriorated over accusations of military failures against jihadists and allegations of political interference. On February 17, 2022, it was announced that French troops, present in Mali since 2013 for counter-terrorism purposes, as well as European partners involved in training missions, would withdraw from Malian soil. This decision followed escalating tensions between the Malian junta and the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But one needs to ask how another country can get itself involved in internal matters like the military deployment of another country. Even if Mali and France had made military agreements, that did not mean Mali had submitted its sovereignty to France. However, as one can expect from a former colonial power, the French Minister of Foreign Affairs described the military junta ruling Mali since August 18, 2020, as irresponsible and illegitimate. Well, as long as they allowed French troops to be in Mali, the military junta was legitimate, but when they refused, they became illegitimate. That's how France offers support and takes it back. It always wants something in return. On January 31, 2022, provoked by this statement, the Malian junta summoned the French ambassador to Mali, ordering him to leave the country within 72 hours. A clear message was delivered that from now on, France and every European country were to respect the laws of Mali. If they did not and made irresponsible statements, they would be kicked out. These tensions have been ongoing and were evident during the 2020 PAO summit, where French President Emmanuel Macron met with the heads of state of the G5 Sahel countries, including Mali. These countries were asked to clarify their position regarding the French military intervention in the Sahel, amid growing disputes over alleged collaboration between terrorist groups and the French military. Furthermore, the threat of French forces' withdrawal from the Sahel was raised during the meeting. In fact, the number of French forces was halved in 2021, as France joined the European Union-led Takuba Task Force, a multinational military task force operating in the Sahel region to combat terrorism and instability. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. You see, Mali's history is marred by conflict, including the expulsion of Malian armed forces from the northern part of the country by Tuareg rebels and separatists in 2012. The situation was complicated by the involvement of groups like Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and the Movement for Unity and Jihad in Western Africa. These events, coupled with ongoing disputes and tensions, have played a role in Mali's recent decision to change its official language away from French. On March 22, 2012, a military coup took place in Mali, an action widely condemned by the international community. By the summer of 2012, the situation in Mali had deteriorated significantly. The northern part of the country was under the control of Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and the Movement for the Unity and Jihad in Western Africa, which had turned against the national movement for the liberation of Azawad. They were advancing towards the southern regions, which were under the authority of the Malian army. It was under these circumstances that Western actors decided to intervene in the Mali crisis. But helping Mali get rid of the terrorists was not the only goal the French military was coming with. The underlying covert goal was to have the military stationed in Mali, which can be used to pressure either the presidents in case of civilian government or the military commander if there is a coup. However, a formal touch was given, branding the terrorist risk as the major reason for military intervention. One can argue that the terrorist threats might have been created by France as well. There have been incidents where governments have hired militants and terrorists to create artificial threats in countries to justify interventions. There is a complete report by the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, on this. As early as December 2012, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution UNSCR 2085, authorizing the deployment of a military force in Mali. Following this resolution, France launched Operation Serval on January 11, 2013. The primary objective of this operation, as stated by Charbonneau, was to dismantle terrorist networks in northern Mali, to neutralize at least 60% of their forces swiftly. Throughout the post-colonial era, Mali has maintained close ties with France, but they are often characterized by paternalistic economic and military interventions. It's because from 1892 to 1960, French rule in Mali was marked by extensive economic exploitation. France extracted significant quantities of Mali's natural resources, including gold from areas like Satiola and Lulo and uranium from mines like Arlit, to fuel its own industrialization and economic growth. Agricultural products such as peanuts and cotton were heavily exploited for export, leading to Mali's economic dependence on these limited commodities. This exploitation left Mali susceptible to fluctuations in global markets, a vulnerability that persisted even after gaining independence due to neo-colonial economic policies and connections. Not only that, but the imposition of French culture and values during the colonial era profoundly impacted Mali's social fabric. Indigenous languages and traditions faced suppression as French became the dominant language, and colonial education systems were introduced. The preferential treatment shown by French colonial authorities to specific ethnic groups, such as the Bambara and Tuareg, resulted in divisions and tensions that endure today. This erosion of cultural identity and practices created a divide between older generations, preserving traditional values, and younger generations influenced by Western ideals. Often, people with a colonial mentality argue that even if France exploited Mali, it developed it well. However, the reality is quite otherwise. Under French colonial rule, infrastructure development primarily served the purpose of facilitating resource extraction and administrative control. It was never meant to be beneficial for the people of Mali. Major projects like railways and roads were constructed, but their benefits primarily flowed to urban centers and regions near trade routes. Rural and remote areas remained neglected, impeding their development and access to essential services. These infrastructure disparities have persisted, posing ongoing challenges to Mali's pursuit of equitable development. Not only that, but during the colonial era, the French colonial administration employed forced labor systems, notably through the surplus system. Local laborers were compelled to work on public projects without compensation from the late 1800s to the mid-1900s, resulting in significant human rights abuses and the exploitation of the local population. This practice perpetuated poverty and marginalization, leaving a lasting impact on Malian society. France's colonial impact on Mali's political legacy and fragmentation has had enduring repercussions. The concentration of administrative power in Bamako led to limited regional representation, unequal development, and a fragmented national identity. Local governance was suppressed, artificial borders were imposed, and authoritarian rule endured. These factors continue to mold Mali's political landscape, even in the aftermath of gaining independence in 1960. Even after independence, Mali's close ties with France persisted, driven by cultural, economic, and military cooperation. These connections have been shaped by historical links, contemporary geopolitical interests, and regional dynamics. The French language and culture continued to wield influence in Mali, and economic interdependencies persisted, creating challenges in fully asserting Mali's national identity and sovereignty. After knowing all this, Asimi Goita, the president of Mali, finally decided to drop the French out of Mali's administration. It had remained an official language for enough period, and that was it. Since the root of all the influence, control, and loyalty of Mali's future generations to France was the French language, he suspended it. However, that's not the only thing he has done. For years, he has been consolidating all his powers to make sweeping changes in Mali, which are aimed at ending French influence. Back in August 2020, Mali experienced a coup led by Colonel Asimi Goita. The military took control amidst peaceful mass protests, calling for the resignation of then-President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita. Keita was subsequently arrested and removed from office by the military, citing various government failures, including corruption and instability. Following the August 2020 coup, a transitional government was established. Asimi Goita assumed the role of vice president under transitional President Bah Ndao and Prime Minister Mokhtar Ouane. The primary goal of this government was to guide Mali towards a return to full civilian rule. However, in May 2021, within 9 months, another coup hit Mali, led by Vice President Asimi Goita, who seized power on the night of May 24, 2021. President Bah Ndao, Prime Minister Mokhtar Ouane, and Minister of Defense Souleymane Doucouré were captured. Goita declared that Ndao and Ouane had been stripped of their powers, and new elections were scheduled for 2022. Following the May 2021 coup, Mali's constitutional court designated Asimi Goita as the interim president, citing a vacancy in the presidency. Goita had already declared himself interim president just 2 days after taking control. From that day on, he knew he could make historical changes in Mali, and now we are seeing that. It turns out that Asimi Goita's plan to suspend French as an official language was the trigger point in Africa to move away from France. This happened in July this year, after which we have seen a series of coups in Africa, all of which are aimed at distancing away from France. Within the span of a single month, 2 African nations, Niger and Gabon, bore witness to military coups. The military coup in Niger unfolded on July 26, 2023, when the Presidential Guard detained President Mohamed Bazoum. The justification given for this action was dissatisfaction with Bazoum's management of the country's security situation, particularly the ongoing conflict with Islamist militants in the Sahel region. However, the underlying reason was the president's deep ties with the French government. He was serving France more than his own people. Then, in Gabon, a Central African nation, a military coup took place on August 30, 2023, resulting in the removal of President Ali Bongo, whose family had held power for more than 5 decades. The Gabonese coup was seen as a response to the recent election, in which the nation's electoral commission declared Bongo the winner with 2/3 of the vote. Unlike the coup in Niger, this event was not explicitly tied to security concerns or Islamist threats. Instead, it was viewed as a reaction to the enduring dominance of the Bongo dynasty in Gabonese politics. Not only that, but the president was found to have ties with the French government, with his family having luxurious assets in France. It revealed that the president was just a French puppet. Do you think other African countries should stop using the former colonial masters' languages? Isn't it true that using the language of a former colonial power promotes feelings of subjugation and loyalty to it? Let us know whether Mali's decision was good or not. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.